Sorry. Okay, this is Sue Frederick, and it's our Patreon group in July of 2024. And tonight we are talking about the number 9 and all of its applications. And we're starting with a discussion of this energy being so swirly whirly right now as we ascend in consciousness and lift our frequencies for this big moment of consciousness shifting. And the way that shows up in our lives is often through conflict or illness or grief or something that brings up an old wound, perhaps, that needs to be healed, that's been buried within us for a long time. So, Lydia, what were you saying about that?
We have Chiron and Aries right now, which is also helping those old wounds come to the surface. And yes, I'm working with a client who I worked with for the last couple of years. And at the end of last year, they didn't invite me back. And then they invite me back this year in a very belated manner. And, all weekend, I've just been really just angry at how they've been dealing with me and treating me. And I had to write them an email today that took me 2 hours to write because I had to edit myself. So I was writing the email for the highest good and getting my point across. But it opens up deeper wounds of not being respected, feeling diminished.
Right.
I mean, when I really sat back and like, what's being triggered here? My feelings of what? And it was really like respect and lack of respect and feeling diminished and feeling like I have no voice.
Well, I'm very impressed that you're aware of that and you took your time to process that before you responded. But those are probably childhood wounds, Lydia, from way back, And when those come up, often they quickly trigger us because we've been carrying them a long, long time, And usually there's hardly any time between that coming up and triggering us and then us responding in a bad way. And so that's really good that you were able to pull back and sort of look at it. So as you think of those wounds of self-worth and everything from childhood, how does the 9 energy that we're talking about tonight, how does that help your process?
I don't think rise above is the right term because that's not, I think I need to come to terms with perhaps that's not the intention of, the people that I'm dealing with. And spend maybe more time on that with myself, just addressing and healing in my own ways, whether it's through journaling or therapy or whatever it is. But, and yeah.
Usually I find there's 2 pieces to it. And one is, this is about them and their issues. That's always a huge piece of it that, the angels will say, don't worry, Sue, this is not about you. This is about them. Find your compassion. But the other piece is that when we cool down, there's always a part of ourselves we can look at and release and say, I don't need to be that way anymore. That's smaller than who my soul is. And in the grand lifetime of my soul's journey in this life, I will look back when I do my soul review, and this little glitch will be so insignificant. And so I'm not going to let it trip up my own personal ascension into higher frequency.
Absolutely. And I started to apply that today
Yeah.
because working with you and around you and your verbiage and your process, I'm like, okay, I did start entering that into my thought process while I was dealing with this today.
And that's the hard part for us, that we can sometimes easily say, okay, well, this isn't about me. But the next step is perhaps there's a lesson in it. And I think there always is. And I think there's always a lesson, a gentle, loving lesson, that there's something in us that needs to be released and let go of. I've noticed when I have client interactions that aren't happy, you know, in an email, because I've been doing client work for more than 2 decades. And so in the early years of it, you know, if a client would come back and say something or kind of test what we had talked about, you know, then I would really get kind of riled up. And what I learned from that was, for me, it was triggering things like the need to be right, which came from growing up in a family where I was never right, you know?
Right. Yes, right.
Right. And so I've got to get that last word in and be right, because that never happened growing up. And for many women, that has been a problem all of our lives, that we have never been right in the face of the powerful man that we have running the show. And so that trigger of I need to be right. First, we got to forgive ourselves about it and say, "Oh, you beautiful soul, you've been wounded by not having your voice recognized and acknowledged. So let's heal that. Let's heal that right now." So,
Right. I just want to say, is a part of it also for me is that I see through things and I see, you know, the right path to take. And so when I'm not being heard, when I'm not being listened to, it might come across as the need to be right. But I really am coming from that position of like, no, 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 I see how this can be. And I see it in a way that's good for all of us. You
well, the
know,
hard part about life is that our visions are never completely in sync with another
of
person's
course.
vision. I think it's taken me 73 years to learn that just because I see things should go a certain way and it seems like the right solution, nobody else sees it that way, you know? And that's hard for us because we get very clear on, oh, this vision, I really understand how to solve this problem. And everybody else is going, no, that's not going to work for me. And we're like, what? Okay, we're talking about the number 9, the energy of 9, and even applying it to what may be coming up for each of us in this whirly swirly energy time that I wrote about today in Patreon, where old wounds, old patterns that are ready to be healed and released. And actually, we're being called, all of us, to use this swirly energy right now that we might call conflict, that we might call fear, anger, doubt, blame, to use it to let the roto-rooter drill up this parts of ourselves that need to be healed, and then surrender it. And we have many guides and angels helping us do that. And that is so perfect for a discussion of the number 9, because the 9 energy says, hey, what happened in the past is okay, you've learned it, you've gathered what you needed to gather from it. Now release it, because you're moving into the new, into the next, even when you can't see what that is. So anybody else want to talk about the swirly whirlies in their life and what they look like? You have to unmute, don't forget. I just got another question here.
I can't be the only swirly whirly.
I know, you guys, come on, don't make Lydia be the only one here. So unmute and talk about, well, I know that, you know, Marcia, you were talking about how you felt that the whirly energy was kind of coming up physically for you and causing you to feel even dizzy, you know, and feel off balance. And you've been through so much physically that it's no surprise to me that it would come up for you that way, because your body is reading your soul so clearly and moving you through all these challenges. So of course you're going to feel the swirly whirl energy of this ascension time in humanity, and then it's probably going to act out in your body. Does that seem right to you, Marcia?
That makes a lot of sense. After I saw Sue's email this afternoon, I had sent her an email. I had a stroke 4 years ago, and probably the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been feeling really off balance.
Mm.
And this afternoon, it really came to a head, so to speak. I lost my balance and I fell,
Oh.
and I banged the back of my head. It didn't hurt it, but it kind of did. It was a cautionary tale that I
Yeah.
need to be careful that things are changing, and that's how it seems to be impacting me.
I mean, Marcia, we can even imagine that as this energy of the world, of the ethos, of the collective swirls the way it's swirling, that it is affecting the physical parts of us, the physical. I mean, you know, the cancer in me was in my physical body, that's for sure. So I do think it's being reflected in our physicality, but it is a call to action. You know, for you, it's a call to action to really be careful and have, you know, whatever support you need to help you, and, you know, to find out if possibly, I get that there's a medication that could be causing this, you know, so really talk to your doctor or something. And then, you know, for all of us, if it means it's an increase in headaches or getting sick or COVID has kind of come around again, you know, pay attention to how that could be asking you to release something old that you don't need anymore, and to keep up with this energy spiraling. Now, I think I saw some.
So
Yes, go
when I'm
ahead.
sorry, when like this, I feel like the last 2 years of my life, I have been really intense
Mm-hmm.
through my grief, but also not only in that grief, or the grief is the catalyst for all of this other stuff coming up that I really have to look at. But like this energy cycle that you're referencing, is it more recent? Is it,
So in
or
numerology, when we look at the universal cycles, and this energy shift definitely has to do with the numerological universal numbers. So we are in a 9-year cycle that began in 2017. And if we go back and look at the world and even look at our lives in 2017, I think we'll notice how things have shifted and changed. I mean, in 2017, I was living in Colorado in our family home, and, you know, Jean did not have cancer. I did not have cancer. And
that
there,
was I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, it was such a different time, a different
Yeah.
energy. I believe there was kind of an easier sense of grace there and comfort. And then the 2017 new universal year kicks in, and we've leveled up at every single year. And this is an 8 universal year, so it's explosive this year. And, you know, when I was doing those numerology predictions in January, I said it's going to be like a whiplash year where you're just looking over here and thinking that's how things will go. And then you're looking over here going, that's how it'll go. And I'll say that's been true in my personal life. And I also think it's been true in the public arena. If we look at all the things that have just sort of gone back and forth, and like Marcia said, like it's hard to keep your balance, it's hard to get your footing right. And so if we look at it that way, then next year, starting in January, is the 9 universal year of this cycle. How perfect for us to talk about it. And that 9 is the culmination, like we will have shifted it. We will have completed this intense cycle of growth. And we have all had to be brought along to it. Now, when you see a lot of conflict and fighting, that's part of it. That's the humanity wound that has to come up in order to have light brought to it and hopefully healed. You know, humans have been at war with one another since the beginning of human life on Earth. And we're just seeing it play out now in families and neighborhoods and countries and the world. And next year, it's really going to be a shifting into the wisdom of the 9, the recognition of the culmination of this lesson and this pattern we've been experiencing, and then the surrender of it, so that by the time the 1 year comes in 2026, we're all taking this collective breath and we're starting a whole new world, a whole new life, a whole new country. And it's going to have this higher light frequency in it. And yeah, that can mean some changes that are uncomfortable, but that's the process that we're in.
What if, so I have a soul agreement relationship, a number 9 with my spouse
Mhm.
and my son in spirit also. We had a 9 agreement.
Mhm.
And then what, I guess, in those relationships, but then also when you're in a 9 universal year, does that impact those soul agreement 9s
Yeah,
in a
so
different way
let's
also?
talk about these are such great questions. So the 9 soul agreement with anybody means that you're going to bring each other the hardest lessons. They're the culminating lessons. Grief is recognized as the energy of the 9, of surrendering what is released. So yes, a soul agreement of the 9 means it will have the hardest and highest lessons to it. But in a marriage, it just means that you two are going to walk through this partnership, having to keep embracing the hard truth, the hard lessons of the relationship, to make it work. Like, it's not a soul agreement where you go to sleep in that relationship. It's going to constantly ask you to grow and work on this together. And then when you're no longer doing that, that relationship can be over with. But again, that's your soul's free will.
Right.
But the
Is
other
it-
thing, Kelly, don't forget, with your son, he's still with you. That's eternal. But he was teaching you, and he has taught you the incredible lesson of the 9, which is surrender what you know and open to the bigger possibilities of life and death, and that you are a divine being greater than all of this circumstance that has come your way.
Thank you. Does the universal 9 year like intensify those 9 relationships?
It feels to me like there's a harmony for them when we're in the 9 universal year, because we look around and that 9 is influencing everything from the universal year. And then if that's also our soul agreement, what I've noticed in the past when we've been in 9 universal years is that I am more comfortable with the 9, with the surrender, with my 9 soul agreement friendships. It's all kind of in alignment. And then when we start a new cycle, there's a different kind of energy that comes into those relationships. So it really is that you and your partner are sorting out in your souls about how you will move forward and move through this devastating grief. And
Right.
if you're willing to rise up to this challenging lesson together, or if you both decide in your souls that it's better to go separately in your own path to do it. And a lot of grieving parents, Kelly, they might go separately for some parts of the healing, but then they come back to each other. So don't worry, however this feels, it's going to go the way that it needs to go, and your son is helping you through it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart.
My
So,
question was around the soul agreement too.
okay. Did I answer it?
When you have a chance, I'd still like you to read it because there's a little bit more to it.
Well, I can't read that while I'm teaching, so just
Oh,
tell
okay.
me.
I'm sorry, Sue. I'll read it in chat. So the question is, what is the significance of the soul agreement number 9 that I have with both my mother and my father? They were both 7s. And the very different experience I had am having with them in the year of their deaths, which both times is in a 13-4 personal year for me, 13-4 also being a karmic debt number. what is my karmic debt to them around their deaths, and how does it associate with the number 9?
That's a very complicated question, but I think you're asking, how does the soul agreement you have with your departing parents, how does it influence it? First of all, it tells me, Lydia, that you have all the tools you need to surrender this to where it needs to go. When we have a soul agreement of the number 9 with someone, it does mean that we have the tools to walk the hard lessons with them. And our soul can do it gracefully and with surrender. But I know you've struggled, especially with your father and all the stuff that's happening with that. But I think we've also talked about how all the pain around your father's crossing calls you to let go, that you can't control it, you can't be in it the way you want to be in it. And that is certainly a 9 soul agreement. But as we've also talked, you can always be connected to a soul, whether they're on this side of the veil or the other, through meditation, through visualization, through energy work. And so this is definitely a time for you to do that inner work with your dad's soul, and to know that you have a long relationship with your father and his soul in many lives, and that however this plays out in the end of this particular life for him, it's not the end of the story, and it's certainly not the end of your relationship with him.
Yeah, it's just so interesting because my mom, I thought that was the highest lesson, her passing, my walking her to heaven.
Mhm.
And I thought, like there can be no higher lesson, and certainly not with my father, who I didn't have the love that I had with her. I have a fierce loyalty to him, but I don't have the love
Yeah.
for him that I had with her. But yet he is going to be the higher lesson of the two of them for me.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable. And as I'm living through this, I'm like, because what you said to Kelly about walking away, it's
Mhm.
like that's part of potentially a number 9 soul agreement. It's
Yeah.
just unfathomable to me to do that with somebody I've known my entire life, every day of my life. But yet here we are. So it's a process, but that's why I appreciate this so much. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. We're happy that you're with us. There was another question, somebody, or if you've written it in the chat, please unmute and speak up now. Unless, Amber, do you want to read the chats to me, or tell me if there's something there I need to pay attention to, or do you individual people want to unmute and ask your question?
I think both Melanie and Karen were saying that they have old wounds that are surfacing. So I don't know if they want to
Yeah,
talk about them.
Melanie, tell us about that.
It has been a struggle for the past like 2 weeks. Just old wounds is all I can think of to say. My voice, I don't use it as much as I was using it. Had a loss in my family, so that might have triggered something. But my whole just I was on a very good spiritual path, and I've just been very, I don't know, it feels like I'm just covered in mud. Like I'm
Yeah.
stuck.
Well, you're right on target there, because, that is really this whole time period this year and next year. We're going to feel this swirly energy. And like you say, covered in mud, that is a metaphor for, I can't process this. I can't see it clearly. I can't work my way through it, and I say to all of you with a lot of love that we are all going to get through this, and that whatever lessons are coming up to each of us to work on, to release, we have to trust that they're serving our highest good, even if we can't see it at the moment or it doesn't feel that way. And to try to hold on to some vision of what a different life would look like, where we're not in the mud and where we're not struggling to let go of things, and old wounds seem to have healed and settled. What does that look like for each of you? And what would that look like in your work and your relationships? Melanie, were you going to say something?
Yes. So how do so I've been meditating a lot more. I've been grounding a lot more. And I'll have moments of, clarity, but how do we know what our wounds are? I'm going backwards trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I guess what it is. And then I'll release it and I'll do, the techniques that I've learned. And then I'm still where I'm sitting. And then I, go on YouTube and I'm looking for answers, and I hear about the shadow side and, embracing your shadow side. How do we know what our shadow side is or what we need to fix? And because I want to fix it like really badly. And
Well, you'll find it through whatever is triggering you, whether that's in relationships or in your work or a health problem that emerges. We tend to put blinders on and we just keep going, doing what a normal routine looks like for each of us. No matter, all kinds of bizarre things are coming up for us to look at, and we just have blinders on. But right now, the blinders are being taken off. So if we're having a lot of things acting out, then the deep meditation question is, what is all of this confusion, or what is this health, or what is this pain or grief or self-doubt calling me to heal so that I can lift my energy, and at the end of this lifetime know that I did not just sleep through the life, and I really did do my work of trying to ascend to the highest potential I came here to live. And that's for each of us to ask. And our meditations are the great place to do that. Also, automatic writing is great for that, where you ask the question, what is the lesson in this pain? What am I trying to learn? And then take a breath and listen, and then start writing and see what is pouring through you in the writing.
thank you so much.
Thank you, sweetheart.
I just wanted to add and maybe have a good cry.
Yeah, right.
Because last Monday, Melanie, I don't know if you were a part of the angelic ministry class, but I had a good cry in front of the class. And I specifically said that I felt like I was walking through the mud, like a sea of mud. And
I feel like crying right now, so thank you.
yeah, so,
Yes.
and I had a good cry, and I felt a lot better afterwards, both for the cry and for everybody just holding the space and listening. So,
Yeah, I'm a huge
you.
fan of crying because it does help clear out the body, of a lot of the tension that we're carrying, and it opens us up to a higher level. I mean, science has proven that when we have a good cry, it gives us endorphins, which shift our frequency. So, our culture is very anti-cry, and that tells you right there that that's about suppression. Because when we cry, we're cleaning out our energy field and we're releasing what needs to be released, and then we can be shifted to a higher frequency.
Thank you very much. Both of you. Thank you.
Who was the other person, Amber, who had a question?
Karen, I think.
Hey, Karen, do you want to unmute or? Mhm.
Yeah, so for me, I lost my first son in December 2022, which led me on this incredible journey. So I know that was the lesson, right? His passing was really, really traumatic. And I thought I've been really good about remembering whenever I somewhat go down that path of how that happened, of remembering when he walked in the door with a big smile on his face. So I thought I was doing that. But then my younger son passed in May, and actually having my first son pass actually helped me really so much with my second son, which, people are like, how do you even get out of bed? But I know they're together and they're happy. But then my husband started talking about how my older son passed, and now all that trauma has like resurfaced, and I'm not sleeping and I have anxiety.
Yeah,
And it's
Karen,
like,
it's
how do
in
I
your
fix this?
it's in your body, definitely. you know, and that's the problem with grief trauma. I think grief trauma gets in our body and our cells, our physicality in a very intense way. And in my first book, Bridges to Heaven, I wrote about how physical movement and eating really healthy, cleansing foods
Yeah.
is so important for grief and moving some of that trauma out of your body. But even when we do those things, there can still be, if we're deeply sensitive people, which I know all of you are, you wouldn't be here, there can still be trauma buried in the body. I mean, I think back about, you know, all the years when I would go visit a girlfriend in the hospital giving birth to a baby, and it was a joyful occasion. And just walking down the hospital, I would start having a gag reflex that came from, you know, 20 years ago with Paul and all of the terrible suffering he went through. So I would try therapy. I tried all kinds of stuff. And I think what I've learned is, you know, there will be a time when it's ready to be healed. And so just ask for that. Ask the angels
Okay.
to help you heal this in the right way that will serve your highest growth at the right time that will serve everyone's highest growth.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that physical stuff. And there's tapping, you know, there's EFT, there's so many great therapies out now, Reiki, that really work with moving that energy through and out of your body. But it's also an inner work. I mean, I really believe there's no fabulous healer that can just step into your life and do some work and it's gone. I think, of course, it's us that has to do the big work, the heavy lifting with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Our hearts are with you, Karen. You're a beautiful, highly evolved soul, and so are your sons.
Thank
Was there another one? Anybody? Okay, well then I will talk more about the 9. So if your birth path is the number 9, and remember, you can go to my soul path calculator if you haven't already, and see if you're a 9 birth path or in a 9 personal year or in a 9 pinnacle. And all of those are important. So if you're on the 9 life path, it means that your beautiful, old, wise soul agreed before you came to Earth that this was going to be your ultimate graduation from the lessons of the physical life, meaning that you would have disappointment, people around you would break your heart, things wouldn't go maybe the way you had planned, and all of those things would bring up for you an opportunity of tremendous soul growth through releasing, surrendering, and stepping into your wisdom, your compassion, your forgiveness, and your unconditional love, and finding work that makes a difference for the world. A 9-path soul has to feel at the end of the day that they've somehow made a difference, that they've done something good in the world. I know many 9-path souls who are therapists or doctors, or they run nonprofits. You know, it's that urge to not just be good at your work and make money from it, but to be able to know that it's in alignment with helping others in some way. Also, artists who bring beautiful music or uplifting artwork to the world are often on that 9 path also, knowing that they want to shift frequency with beauty in the world. And so they use their artistic gifts to do that. I also know many ministers who are on the 9 path, and their soul told them, hey, this is your moment to really step into your higher learning here and not be controlling, manipulative, bitter, disappointed in humanity, all the dark side of the 9, and to step into helping others manage the earth life and being the bridge for others to see it from a higher perspective. Ultimately, that's a 9 path well lived. And then we have the 9 personal year that we each hit.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
What is negative vibration of a number 9?
The negative,
Who's not on their path?
disappointment in the world, broken heart that makes you bitter. You start feeling like, gee, everybody in this world lets me down. This is a terrible place to be. I don't like it here. And yet you're very competent, you're very strong, and so you keep surviving. You might even be really good at your work. But until you, number one, really look for a spiritual purpose that resonates for you, and number two, find work that does make a difference in the world in your way, that bitterness, that disappointment, that just not good energy at all. I mean, I've worked with so many clients on the 9 path, and I can tell you that there's almost nothing or no one more negative than a 9 path soul who refuses to acknowledge the bigger understanding of our spiritual purpose here and is just pointing out everything that's wrong with everybody else and with the world. That's the dark side.
One of my sisters is a 9, and she has spent the last 9 years and more since my mom passed, telling lies about me and driving wedges in very important relationships, including my nephews. And she and I were born on the same day, but 2 years apart. And I just always think to myself, because I think of 9 as such a sage, wonderful number. And I'm like, how can this be?
No, every
How-
path has its great potential and then its dark side if we don't choose to step up. And that's the interplay I always talk about here on Earth of free will and destined path. Your sister came in with a great potential to be a healing, wonderful, helpful, wise person on Earth. But when she would get hurt or disappointed, she went to her negativity. And that's what drives you eventually to be that very kind of manipulative. And a 9 path soul can be very manipulative because they've been here many times on Earth. They're very competent and skilled, and that can make them very manipulative in the dark side. In the good side, they are completely authentic and loving and caring because they understand this is not just a physical world and they have a purpose here. That's the ultimate learning for the 9 path soul.
That's great. Thank you.
So we've talked about the 9 soul agreement, and now we talk about the 9 personal year, which we each get to go through every 9 years in our journey. And you all know from the classes and also from my numerology workbook that your 9 years hit you at different times according to the path that you're on. And one of the things that always gets people to really consider numerology and not be cynical about it is when they pull up that birth path sheet that I have in the back of my workbook, and they map out their life from the year they were born all the way up to their current year on that chart. And they go, oh, wow, I hit a 9 year when I was 5 and we moved from New Orleans to this other place and it was so traumatic. And then I hit a 9 year, and you just go through those and you go, wow, a 9 year can really throw your life upside down. But if you understand that it's the cleansing, it's the release that we need, it's the cleaning of the closet so that we can then bring in the new and step up to the next level of what our soul came to learn and do and grow through. And change is terrifying to humans, You all are more enlightened than most. But for most humans on Earth, when they lose a job or they go bankrupt or someone breaks their heart or someone crosses over, they think, oh, it shouldn't be this way. This shouldn't have happened and I don't deserve this. Those are ego statements and ego thoughts. In fact, I have a friend who was happily married to her husband for something like 50 years. And they raised 2 beautiful children who are grown. And then her husband got cancer and died pretty quickly. And now she's really alone and single for the first time of her life. She is so bitter and angry and saying things like, I was cheated. This is so unfair. I was meant to grow old with my husband. No, we aren't here to deserve something. I mean, just because you maybe were a good wife and mother, your future is not here to be, perfect and no trauma. We come to Earth for the opening of the heart, for the growth, and nothing facilitates that growth, that stepping into compassion, wisdom, and love, like losing a loved one or being disappointed in a relationship. That hits everyone on earth at some point. That's the 9. And so then our choice is, are we going to linger in the past, the dark side of the 9, and be angry and bitter? Or are we going to look for a different way to consider this, what's going on? And that's a spiritual growth path right there. And when you look at Helping Parents Heal, who helps the most devastated grieving parents to really look at this in a different way and consider that it might have been a life plan and a soul agreement and that their beautiful child is still around them in spirit. That's the ultimate expression of the culmination of human life, of the 9. And we get to choose. We get to choose how we're going to navigate our endings, how we're going to navigate our surrendering. Nothing is guaranteed. You can take out all the life insurance and build your bank account as big as possible. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have this charmed, safe, happy life. And that's a big, hard lesson for many, many humans. So when we hit those 9-year reinvention points, the 9 says, hey, this is a great lesson and you've culminated all the things you were here to learn. And now you're being asked to let go, clean out the closet, and trust that this is a benevolent, loving universe with a benevolent God force that is serving your highest good, even when it doesn't feel or look that way. That's an ultimate 9 expression right there. So that's the 9 and 1. Oh, and some of you were probably thinking, well, gee, my loved child or my spouse did not cross when I was in a 9-year. Yeah, often they cross earlier in the cycle, and we have to walk those steps of healing. But whenever we get to a 9 personal year, that comes at the end of a cycle of that has included grief and loss, that 9 is really going to trigger us to change and grow. So a small example, because I know many of your losses are much harder than mine, but when Paul died, I was in a 6 personal year. 6 and 9 are related. Those two numbers even look alike. You flip them together, they're like yin and yang. So I was in a 6 personal year when Paul died. And I tried to carry on. Like I went to grad school, I stayed in Boulder, I just tried to maintain life, and I worked at a fitness club and stuff. And then my 9 personal year came along and I couldn't do it anymore. And that's when, you guys have heard this story, I sold all my belongings and moved to Mexico. That was my immature way of letting it all go and saying, I just got to let all this go. I don't even want to live in a country where anybody knows me or knows Paul or any of that. So you just know that when you hit that 9-year, it's going to be the final releasing of this grief and loss that you've experienced in your 9 circle. And it will serve you in the long run. Don't worry, even if you end up in Mexico, you will find your way back in the new cycle, and you will be stronger and you will be healing a little more than you were. So everything serves us and serves our healing and our growth, as long as we're saying yes and we're not fighting it every step of the way. So that is personal year, soul agreement path. I want to talk about Pinnacles. I love talking about our, oh, Melanie has a great comment there. Let me pull that up here. Let me see if I can see it. Melanie says, I was a 6 personal year when Justin died. I understand, baby. That 6 year, it's a year of heart and home and family and loved ones. I've lost Paul, my father, and several other people in a 6 personal year. and it calls us to healing, to tending the fire of the home. Often we have to even care for those loved ones when we're in a 6 personal year. But you know, as humans, that the grief often doesn't surface right away, you know, that we'll think, okay, I can carry on, I can be strong. Humans are so strong and so determined to carry on and have a normal life no matter what hits us. But then we hit that 9 year, and I've seen it in my clients too. You know, they'll come to me and say, my child or my partner died in this other year, and then I hit this current year, which is a 9, and everything is falling apart. And I'll say, that's good. That is really good. Let it fall apart, because you've been holding it on to it, and now it all has to be released, and it will reconfigure itself in a way that serves your highest good. So I hope that helps some of you. So then we talk about the pinnacles, these 4 overarching lessons that we hit in our lifetime. And again, the soul path calculator will help you figure out what pinnacle you're in. And it's so enlightening to go back if you've had a 9 pinnacle, or if you're in one, and see what years it's affecting or did affect, and what was going on in your life. It can be a culmination of everything good in your career, in your learning, in your relationships, but there will probably also be very hard lessons in there too, some losses, and some stepping away from the hunting gathering process of being human on earth. The 9 will ask us to see the bigger picture. And if it's our pinnacle, it's really asking us to see the bigger picture of human suffering and of our role in helping others evolve here on earth. A 9 pinnacle will push you and kick you to get that realization, and it's better not to fight it. So that's the pinnacle of the 9. And then, of course, we've talked about the universal year of the 9, which is what our world is going through as we move into 2025. And of course, it's going to kind of get really frenetic right in the fall. We all know that's the election time. And then in January, we start universally the 9 year. So I would say, don't expect 2025 to totally just put everything back together and carry on. It's going to be more like, okay, well, this can't carry on anymore, so that's going to end. Oh, this has to end too. But there'll be also a higher spiritual awareness feeling, frequency in that 9 universal year, and a sense of some kind of forgiveness and compassion. The 9 always carries that potential with it: forgiveness, compassion, understanding the bigger picture. Because think of it, this year we're all in the 8. 8 is just power, power, power. Hey, I'm going to display my power over here. Oh, I'm going to display it over here. And our heads are spinning. But next year there is a culmination of these hard lessons of putting the pieces in their right perspective, so that we can fill it all up with greater light as we move forward. Okay, questions?
Yes, I have a question and I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Question is, are there certain, I should be asking this every time we have these calls for the different numbers. Are there certain numbers, life path numbers, that 9s are more compatible with than, like, are they more compatible with a 1?
So
Because
here's what's so interesting. I work with so many clients, I've noticed certain patterns, and yes, they're definitely, I've met so many couples that are very happy, and one of them is a 9 path and one of them is a 1 path. It's like the alpha and omega, right? And the opposite kinds of energies, and they really merge together to make a very functional life and family and everything. So that's always fascinating to me. But the other thing is that a 9 does incredibly well with an 11 master soul, because their soul agreement then is the number 11, that enlightened wisdom. And so I've seen a lot of those relationships play out really well. And even in the workplace, you know, you'll notice if a boss or something is a 9-path soul, that they're going to naturally get along better with the workers who are the 1 or the 11. And also with the 6, a 9-path gets along pretty well with a 6, because again, those numbers are so yin and yang parts of each other. And also the soul agreement with a 6-path is the number 6. So that is heart. I have to read that comment. I'm sorry. Let me just pull that up. So she says, my life path is a 33. Does the 9 influence the life path? That, well, of course it does when you, oh, do you mean adding the 6 and the 33? I'm not sure what your question is, Melanie. You'll have to unmute.
Sorry, when you said the 6 and the 9 were kind of like a yin and a yang,
Mm-hmm.
633 life path.
Mm-hmm.
So does the 9 influence that at all? It's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, a 9 soul in your life is going to be very much the yin and the yang, and it's going to be bringing you very heartfelt lessons and tremendous love as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other comments before we let you guys all go back and watch the Olympics or whatever you're doing tonight?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when you were talking about your friend who lost her husband and about how she was focused on how unfair it was, I was sitting here thinking, yeah, damn it, it is unfair. It's really unfair. And then I don't know if you saw my head shoot over, but Jagger turned the light red. I have this art pics of him that's always white. He turned it red. Red always means I love you. Because
Yay, Jagger. I swear Jagger is the most powerful soul. I swear, Amber. He's never gonna let you have a wrong thought. He's just never gonna let you do that.
He's so present.
He's so present. And the other thing is, you know, we have to get rid of the word fair and unfair in our culture, because it is such a small view or small understanding of why we come to Earth. We can't see what's fair or unfair in our tiny little vision here of what's going on in a person's life. We have to see the bigger soul journey. You know, you and Jagger have danced together in many lifetimes and taught each other different lessons. And you both agreed that this would serve your highest good. He's a very advanced soul. You know that. He's actually more advanced than any of us, including you. And so this was the gift of him awakening you and bringing you up to equal his frequency. And so when we use vocabulary like fair and unfair, it's just like a tiny little minuscule ant only seeing a cloud of dirt in front of them rather than pulling back and seeing this big, enormous interplay here of light and dark and the purpose of human evolution and why we come to Earth. You know, when we're in the divine realms, we're not really growing. I mean, yes, we study and we learn and we help from there and we learn from each other and all of that. But when we realize that, gee, I want to be one of the more powerful souls and help humanity and also be a highly evolved soul. I know that my soul was hanging out in the divine going, I want to be like those guides or those angels. I want to be more pure light. I want to be more loving. How do I get there? And I know that the guides said, well, let's sit down and talk about what that lifetime would look like, you know? And that's what happened to all of us. And we were in the divine where we were feeling no pain and we went, sign me up. And then we get here and we're going, no, it's not fair.
I do have one more question. I did a chart for somebody. She's a 6, but her 1 and 9 energies are off the charts. And they're equally high, and she is a leader, and she's a businesswoman, and she's a humanitarian.
So she's bringing the wisdom to the whole thing of the 9, yeah.
But she's a fireball, and she never stops, and she's about 50, and I wonder, like, are you gonna burn out? Like, are you, like, I'm just kind of like, how do you
It
pace
doesn't
it?
matter,
Doesn't
each
matter.
of us has an inner time clock of what we've come to accomplish. And I am quite sure that my inner time clock has said, oh, Sue, you're just getting started in your important work. And that's why part of also going through this health crisis and going, no, I'm not ready to go. When my friends know that last summer at this time, I was saying, I feel like Paul is calling me home, that I might have accomplished this life mission and it's time for me to go home. And I was very emotional, and Christy and Elizabeth were talking to me about what it all meant. And I was feeling and thinking like, yeah, I think I'm done here. Like, I don't know what's next. I would even say those words to Christy. I'd say, I don't know what's next. And then the big event happens, and yeah, I'm here to stay. And yeah, I've got more to do and share and learn and all of that. And so I re-upped, so to speak. But we each have those moments of going, I'm done, I want to let go, I'm finished. And then if it's not really our soul exit point, it's not going to happen. And if it is, it'll definitely fall into place. That's how it works.
Amen.
All right, everybody. So thank you so much for this beautiful night. And please do pay attention to how these things come up in your life, the swirly whirly energies that I wrote about, bringing up things for healing. And Melanie, did you have another comment before we go?
I was just gonna say thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. And, really pay attention to your physical health, all of you, because even as Marcia was pointing out, all of this swirly whirly energy, it really does, we feel it in our physical bodies. We're part of it. So just like in grief, we need to move our bodies to help process some of the energy that's happening to us. We've got to try to eat clean. And by that, I mean, try not to eat sugar as much as humans like to eat sugar, and try to eat a lot of unprocessed, more fresh foods, because that will help us have a more purified system. And we need all the help we can get right now in this crazy frenetic energy that we're all going through. And on that note, I'll tell you, I had some really good potato chips today, and I should not have had them.
Good for
So
you.
I'm not expecting miracles from us, but I am asking us to be aware of how our bodies, how our emotions, how our souls are being affected, and not try to say, oh, well, this means that I'm unhappy in my relationship, perhaps. Really look at it in the bigger picture and say, everyone is feeling something like this. We are all in this evolutionary process together, and we are all going through the swirly whirls together for the greater ascension of our collective consciousness. So let's take a deep breath and be grateful for all the wisdom shared, the questions asked, the energy of the nine, Jagger beautifully stepping in and making his presence known in this conversation. All of that love, all of that goodness that we all experience when we lift up to the higher realms and see the bigger picture, not getting caught in the minutia of the earthly life. And so it is. I love you all so much. And I get to see some of you in the angelic ministry class tomorrow night, which is my all-time favorite thing. So see you all tomorrow.
Thank
Some of
you
you.
so
Love
much.
you. See you
Good to see
tomorrow.
everybody.
Love
Thank
you.
you. Let's guys.
Bye.
Have a great night. Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.